78 million people, born between 1946 and 1964. The baby boomer generation didn't just grow up during one of the most transformative periods in American history. They were shaped by it in ways that still influence how they think, communicate, and see the world today. From the post-war optimism of suburban neighborhoods with white picket fences to the cultural upheaval of the 1960s with protests filling city streets, their psychology was forged in a time when everything seemed possible, but nothing was guaranteed. If you're part of this generation, or if you want to understand the people who raised you, this is their story. The psychology behind the values, the habits, and the perspectives that defined an entire generation. The baby boom started in 1946, right after World War II ended. American soldiers in their uniforms came home to a country that was ready to build, grow, and move forward. The nation had survived the Great Depression and won a world war. Optimism was everywhere. Families grew larger. Suburbs with identical houses and manicured lawns expanded across the country. And for the first time in decades, the future looked bright. Children born during this time grew up in homes where their parents had lived through real hardship. Their mothers and fathers remembered breadlines, rationing books, and deep uncertainty. So when peace finally came, parents wanted to give their children what they never had: stability, security, a chance at the American dream. This created a unique psychological foundation. Baby boomers learned early that hard work led to rewards, that loyalty to your employer meant job security for life, that following the rules brought success. The world their parents built for them was structured, predictable, and full of opportunity. If you worked hard, went to school, got a job, and stayed with one company for 30 years, you could retire with a pension and own your home outright. Television played a huge role in shaping their worldview. Baby boomers were the first generation to grow up with TV sets in their living rooms. They watched shows like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, programs that showed idealized families where problems were solved in 30 minutes. These shows reinforced the values their parents taught them. Respect your elders, work hard, follow the rules. Everything will turn out fine. But this optimism came with expectations. Baby boomers were raised to believe in institutions. Government, corporations, churches, and schools were trusted pillars of society. Authority figures were respected without question. Teachers in their classrooms, doctors in white coats, bosses in corner offices, and elected officials in city halls knew best. You didn't challenge the system. You worked within it. This shaped a generation that values respect for hierarchy. If you're a baby boomer, you probably remember being taught to address adults as Mr. or Mrs., to stand when a teacher entered the room, and to never talk back to your parents. Authority wasn't just respected, it was unquestioned. And that psychology carries forward today. Many baby boomers still expect a certain level of formality in professional settings. They prefer face-to-face conversations over text messages. They value firm handshakes, direct eye contact, and clear verbal communication. In their minds, respect is shown through how you present yourself, not just what you say. Marriage and family life for baby boomers followed a predictable pattern. You dated, got engaged, married young, bought a house, and had children. Divorce was rare and carried social stigma. Couples stayed together even when unhappy because that's what you did. Marriage was a commitment, not just a relationship. You worked through problems. You didn't give up. This created a generation that views marriage as permanent. Baby boomers, who are still married after 40 or 50 years, often credit staying power over happiness. They weathered storms together. They chose commitment when feelings faded. And they expect younger generations to show the same dedication. But this mindset also created silent suffering. Many baby boomers stayed in marriages that weren't healthy because leaving meant failure. Mental health wasn't discussed openly. Therapy was for people with serious problems, not everyday struggles. You handled your issues privately. You didn't air your problems to friends or family. Parenting styles reflected this too. Baby boomer parents believed in discipline, structure, and high expectations. Children were expected to respect adults, follow rules, and contribute to the household. Free-range parenting was the norm. Kids played outside unsupervised, rode bikes through neighborhoods without helmets, and came home when the streetlights turned on. This independence shaped how baby boomers view childhood today. They often criticize modern parenting as overprotective or too permissive. In their view, children today are coddled, given too many choices, and shielded from natural consequences. They believe struggle builds character, and protecting kids from every hardship does them a disservice. But the world they grew up in wasn't without conflict. The 1960s brought massive cultural change. The civil rights movement challenged racial segregation. The Vietnam War divided the country. Young baby boomers watched their peers protest in the streets, question authority, and demand change. Some joined the movement, others held firm to traditional values. This created a split within the generation itself. Some baby boomers embraced counterculture, rejecting the conservative values their parents held. Others doubled down on tradition, viewing the protests as chaos and disrespect. Even today, you'll find baby boomers on both sides of nearly every political and social issue. The generation that was supposed to be unified by shared experience ended up deeply divided by how they responded to change. One of the most defining psychological traits of baby boomers is their work ethic. They were taught that employment wasn't just about earning money. It was about identity. Your job defined who you were. Loyalty to your employer was expected, and in return, you received job security, benefits, and a clear path to retirement. This created a generation that often stayed with the same company for decades. Switching jobs was seen as unstable or disloyal. In their view, you proved your worth by showing up every day, putting in the hours, and waiting for recognition. Promotions came with time and dedication, not by jumping ship to a competitor. But this mindset also created challenges. Baby boomers often struggle to understand why younger generations change jobs every few years. To them, it looks like impatience or lack of commitment. They don't always see that the social contract they grew up with, the one where companies took care of loyal employees, no longer exists in the same way. Another key part of baby boomer psychology is their relationship with money. Many grew up watching their parents scrimp and save. Debt was something to avoid. You saved up for big purchases. You didn't buy what you couldn't afford. Credit cards were for emergencies, not everyday spending. This created a generation that values financial independence and security. Baby boomers are more likely to own their homes outright, to have savings accounts, and to avoid carrying large amounts of debt. But it also created a mindset where asking for help, especially financial help, feels like failure. For many baby boomers, independence is everything. They were raised to be self-reliant, to figure things out on their own, and to never be a burden on others. This is why so many resist moving in with their children or accepting assistance as they age. It's not stubbornness for the sake of it. It's a deeply ingrained belief that depending on others means you've lost your autonomy. Communication style is another area where baby boomer psychology stands out. They grew up in a world where phone calls were the primary way to reach someone. You didn't have instant access to people. If you wanted to talk to someone, you called their landline and hoped they were home. If they weren't, you tried again later. This taught patience. It taught the value of direct, real-time conversation. and it created a generation that prefers talking over texting. To a baby boomer, a phone call feels more personal, more respectful, and more effective than a string of text messages. They don't understand why younger people avoid phone calls or see them as intrusive. But this also creates friction. Baby boomers often feel ignored or dismissed when their calls go unanswered, or when people respond with a text instead of calling back. To them, it feels like avoidance, like their time and effort don't matter. Technology in general has been a challenge for many baby boomers. They didn't grow up with computers, smartphones, or the internet. These tools entered their lives when they were already adults with established habits and routines. Learning new technology later in life requires effort, patience, and a willingness to feel incompetent, something that doesn't come easily to a generation raised to value competence and self-reliance. This is why so many baby boomers struggle with modern technology. It's not that they're incapable, it's that the learning curve feels steeper when you're used to doing things a certain way for 50 or 60 years. And when the world moves faster than you can keep up, it's easy to feel left behind. Social isolation is a growing concern for baby boomers. Many have retired from jobs that gave them daily interaction and a sense of purpose. Their children have moved away to different states for career opportunities. Friends have passed on or moved into assisted living facilities. And the neighborhoods they once knew, where everyone waved from their porches and borrowed cups of sugar, have changed into communities where people don't know their neighbors' names. Loneliness affects this generation more than people realize. Baby boomers grew up in neighborhoods where people knew each other, where kids played kickball in the street together, and where front porches were gathering spots on summer evenings. Today, those connections are harder to maintain. Social media doesn't fill the gap for people who value face-to-face conversation and handwritten letters. Health challenges compound this isolation. Baby boomers are now facing aging parents, chronic health conditions, and their own mortality. They're caught between caring for elderly parents in nursing homes and supporting adult children who may still need financial help. This sandwich generation stress creates psychological pressure that previous generations didn't face in the same way. And yet many baby boomers resist asking for help. They were raised to be independent, to solve their own problems, and to never be a burden. Admitting you need assistance with daily tasks, acknowledging you can't drive safely anymore, or accepting that you need to move out of the family home feels like losing your dignity. This can lead to feelings of invisibility. Baby boomers often feel like the world has moved on without them, that their experiences, their wisdom, and their contributions are no longer valued, that younger people dismiss them as out of touch or irrelevant. And when you've spent your whole life being productive, being needed, and being part of something bigger than yourself, losing that sense of purpose is deeply painful. But here's what often gets overlooked. Baby boomers have lived through more change than any generation before them. They've seen the world go from rotary phones to smartphones, from 3 television channels to endless streaming content, from segregation to a black president, from the Cold War to global terrorism. They've adapted more than people give them credit for, and they carry wisdom that comes from decades of lived experience. They remember what it's like to work without email, to navigate without GPS, to research without Google. They know how to have difficult conversations face to face. They understand deeply the value of commitment, of showing up even when it's hard, of building something that lasts. The psychology of baby boomers is rooted in resilience. They were raised by parents who survived real hardship during the Great Depression and World War II. They grew up during a time of unprecedented opportunity, but also deep uncertainty about the future. They built careers from the ground up, raised families while navigating massive social change, and watched the world transform in ways their parents never could have imagined. So if you're a baby boomer, know that your perspective matters. Your experiences shaped not just your own life, but the world that came after you. And if you're trying to understand a baby boomer in your life, remember that their values, their communication style, and their view of the world were forged in a very different time. A time that taught them to work hard, to respect authority, value loyalty, and never give up on what matters. If you found this helpful, hit subscribe. I cover generational psychology and human behavior every week. And if you want to understand the psychology of other generations, that video is on screen now.